Our next meeting is with Chief Soar. Chief? Please come up and talk with us about, I think we're talking about driveways.
Should you remember?
I'll label that.
I'll label that. Didn't catch your name. What's your name? Dwight Robertson? Dwight.
Yes, we discussed driveways. We totally understand the charge, but as you just brought up, with trying to keep the rural, the character of the town. The only issue that we're having is that over the last 20 to 30 years, houses are not built right on the street anymore. Years ago, you'd pull up the first night, you'd go sort of past the house, right in front, we take the front of the building. It's a procedure that we have to follow. Certain things have to work in certain manners. We can't reach these buildings from the street anymore. They're being put back, 100, 200 feet. Some of these houses are going back. The fire trucks over the past 30 years have gotten bigger. Our job has expanded. We don't have the small compact truck. The average size of our truck is 30 feet long. They're about 10 feet wide. For us to get into a 10-foot driveway is not the easiest thing for us to do. During good weather, once we drop the fire hose, we lay a line in, we go in, we have water on the trucks. We go in, we start to attack with that. Once we tie into the hydrant, then we lay a line that's 4 inches in diameter. That line gets laid as close to the side of the road or the driveway as it can. It's not on the side, so you might as well take away 2 feet. Once that's there, you can't drive over it. And once it's in place, you're not going to move it. It's 4 inches water, flowing 1,000 gallons a minute at least. You're not going to move that. We can't drive over it. If we don't, wintertime, we're going to add snowbanks to a 10-foot driveway, add 2 feet, lay down 8 feet. Our trucks are wider than 8 feet. We can't even get in these driveways. We understand. I have copies of the International Fire Code, and you can look at essentially what it says. And we're not asking for this, but it states that anything where the fire road needs to be, it should be 20 feet wide. If the building's over 30 feet, for us to get a ladder truck into place, it needs to be 25 feet. We're asking essentially on some places if we could get 12 feet, 14 in others. We work with you depending on where the house is. I understand some of the roads aren't even that wide. What happens is essentially we block the road and we'll have somebody come around, we'll have apparatus come the other direction and we'll bring them around if we need to. But there are essential orders that we have to put trucks in, and with these small tight driveways, we're unable to do what we need to do. So we're just the code, the international code requires 20. We're not asking for the 20 feet. We're asking if you could look at 12 on some of the tighter roads. 14 feet would be better. It would give us a little more room to work with, especially in the winter. This wasn't it was a long winter, it was cold, but we really didn't have a lot more snow than normal. And the snowbanks essentially cut, they're going to cut the driveway size in half. And it limits our access.
Okay. As you mentioned, I mean, and this is an issue because we're balancing. We want to make sure that people are safe. On the other hand, we do have this mandate that says we're trying to hold on to the rural, what people perceive as the rural character of the town. And what we've been grappling with is 14. In one case, we were talking about 16 feet wide for a driveway servicing 2 houses, and that begins to really have an impact, as you can imagine, on the sort of aesthetics of the site planning that we're trying to hold to. There are neighborhoods in Weston where the street width is 13 feet. I mean, I'm talking about Aberdeen
Oh,
Road.
no. We know,
And, I mean,
what we've said is in a case like that, what we do is we set up, and there's other ways that the apparatus can get in to get done what we need to get done. Where it's a driveway, there's one way in, there's one way out.
I mean, my street, I live on Crescent Street. Crescent Street at the narrowest is 13 feet wide.
Mhm.
Branching off Crescent, right across the street from my house, is a town road, the Malone Road, where the street width, the town street width is 9 feet. And that's not, there's only one way in and out of that. I think we want to be sure and work with you and have as safe a situation as we can. But we also need to take into account the considerations of landscaping and topography. In a lot of cases, we want to try to preserve as many trees as possible. In some cases, the trees are close into the driveways. So all we ask is a dialogue, sort of on maybe a site-by-site basis, where your concerns and our concerns, we should find a way to meet in the middle.
Yeah, that would work. That would work. Just as long as we both understand, because I understand what you're trying to do, and I understand what with the rural character. But when you're sticking a 6,000 square foot house 300 feet off the road, and we just said 14-foot driveway won't even work for that, because the amount of water that we're going to need if that house burns, we're going to have to lay at least 2 lines to go in there. So every situation is going to be different, and we're more than willing to meet with you for any development that you have. Just give us a drawing. This is what it is. This is why. We'll work with you and say we'd like to see it maybe 12 feet. Understanding, it's the size of the street. Can we work with this? We know it's not going to be perfect. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do with this. The way the streets and things were built from years ago. But with the fire department, we'll adapt. We'll find a way to get through and do. We're just trying to prevent anything in the future from happening. So an open dialogue would be very appreciated.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, my house is up on a hill. The driveway getting to it's a 10-foot driveway. It's got to be 100 feet long, but it comes up to the side of the house. So, I mean, how does that work? I mean, you're gonna set up the trucks if my house catches on fire, God forbid. You set up the trucks on the driveway, and then you drag the hoses around as the fire's on the side of the house away from the driveway.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to set up your apparatus there with the hoses and all the rest of it, and that's why you need the driveway
That's why
width.
we need the width, because everything has to be, the ladder truck has a 100-foot reach. Everybody asks, well, why do you need 100 feet in Westland? You don't have buildings, that's all. It's the reach factor that we need. It's if the buildings are off the street 75 feet, the ladder truck, a 100-foot ladder truck has about 85 to 90 feet of actual working ladder. So if we pulled up to your house, the ladder's in the back of the truck's going to pull in. We've already lost 30 feet because of the truck being 30 feet long. This thing comes off the rear. We try to reach it. Hopefully, we'd be able to reach your roof with that.
Do you have situations where you have to use the ladder truck often, or?
We like to have it every run.
Yeah, we like to have it at every building fire. I mean, we have the large fires are definitely down. We do have a number of smaller that are, things that are contained. But we like to have it there, set up at every run, just in case if we need it for our safety, if we have to get anybody out of the building, their safety, to vent the roof. Anything over 30 feet, we can't. Our ground ladder is 35 feet. You have to use the angle of the work. We can't reach the roof. So that's why we have to have the ladder truck.
The ladder truck is a pretty standard piece of equipment, but are there other trucks that may work better in these tight spaces that will be able to serve your purposes?
Unfortunately,
obviously we're not interested in either you guys or residents becoming endangered more just for convenience. So
the ladder truck we have is one of the shortest ones made for to carry what we need to be carried upon, which is the 100-foot ground ladder, and another 125 feet of ground ladders, and the necessary equipment such as the fans and the forcible entry tools. It's a small, compact ladder truck compared to the big cities. where they reach out to 110, some of them are going out 125.
And even on our pumps, a city, say like the city of Boston, pump to the pump, a ladder to ladder, they only carry X amount of equipment. Their trucks are a little smaller. Basically, when we go out the door, we have no idea what we're going to. With the way the town operates the staffing, 2 guys going on the pump, they could be going to an accident, they could be going to a medical, they could be going to a building fire, they could be going to a restaurant. We have no idea what we're going to, so we need to carry everything on one truck so that we, when we get there, we have the equipment that we need to carry. We can't, smaller trucks, we can't pull up at a house and say, oh, well, we can't fit in the driveway, we're going to go back and get the small truck. The time that we waste in that.
No, I understand that aspect.
And then we give up water, we're carrying, we meet NFPA standards, Class A pump has to carry 500 gallons of water. The little small F450 trucks, things like that, they can't carry that weight. They don't need it.
The others are more brush trucks.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And it's unfortunate, I understand years ago we did have smaller trucks, and the job has just changed to the point that there was no room in them. That's why they got rid of them. We used to be able to fit in pretty much anywhere that you needed to go. It's unfortunately that's just changed. And like I said, everything used to be built really close to the street. It was a lot easier for us to get to it. 2 guys can easily pull 200 feet of hose off the truck. Where now, if we couldn't get in the driveway, we're trying to pull 1,000 feet, of hose just to make the front door of the house. And for 2 people to do that is nearly impossible.
So it's a combination. It's the distance as well. I mean, that's what you're saying.
It's the distance. The further back it is, the harder it is. Because then we got to start pumping. We have to pump the hydrant once we go over 1,000 feet. There's a lot more to it than just when you watch TV and everybody pulls up and everything works the way it's supposed to work.
Okay. I think we can certainly appreciate that. So, I mean, I think this is going to be a dialogue we're going to be having for a while until we get,
Yep, and that's fine.
On the same page.
That would be great if we could do that.
Just a point of clarification, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're quite comfortable with the 12-foot wide driveway. Isn't it the 14 that we really had a problem with?
Well, yeah, I mean, 12 feet is getting there. Again, it'll depend on the distance from the street.
Right. I'm thinking
It's
of
going to
it.
depend on the size of the house.
Yeah.
You put 7,000.
Right. So we're trying to develop some standards, not just one rule.
And we don't want to
for
narrow it,
everything.
exactly. It was discussed, do we want to set a set number? And we said, for us, it would be great if we said, okay, 18. And we said, okay, fine. But understanding that 18 feet is probably bigger than some of the roads. We understand what you're trying to do. We said, why don't we leave it as open, and then we can have dialogue as to which, some houses, you want to do 12 feet, it'll probably work. It's not that far from the street. We're going to be able to get to it pretty easily. You start going back 300 feet, 7,000 square foot house back there, we're probably going to be looking closer to 14 feet, because at that point, we're going to need X amount of lines in the driveway to get the water that we need down there.
We've also taken into consideration of the hydrant distances, the distance between the hydrants. If a house is over 500 feet away from a hydrant, we require them to put a hydrant within 500 feet of the home. So if they're 600 feet off the street, 500 feet up that driveway or whatever is going to be a hydrant. And then they'll take the domestic feed from the hydrant to the house.
Well, that'll make it easier.
Yeah, it does along the driveway.
Well, maybe instead of all the asphalt, we're talking about in site plan review, if we have really long driveways, we're talking about putting a hydrant in a water
It would
line.
help us though,
That would
so
help,
it's
yeah.
the water department too for water circulation. The bacteria build up on the lines.
And we're not opposed either. We're not opposed to pavers or the ones that you can put the grass through, as long as it gets kept clean and it's, in the wintertime it's plowed up, so you can drive the truck in there.
There are some
ways.
soil stabilization
Yep.
systems too that we've
Yeah,
talked
so if you
about.
want to do a 12 foot and we're asking for 14 on this one, you go, okay, well, how about if we do 12 and we do 2 of this? That's, as long as it can hold the trucks, we're willing to look at that as well.
The new field school building has that grass concrete, they call it, which are the lots that the grass grows up under. There's a 16-foot fire road in front of the school now. That will be all that.
Maybe
concrete
all our
grass.
driveways should be that way.
It's the concrete block with the grass going up through it, and it carries the weight of the fire apparatus. And it almost runs the full length of the front of the school. parking lot right to the far end.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, so we'll work
okay.
it.
And there's been a patch down behind the Middlebrook School now for the past 15 years that they grew, and it's all that thick grass with concrete. We pull up behind there all the time.
Really? They have a lot of fires there?
Well, every time there's a
Well,
walk,
fire
there's a
alarm.
hydrant right there to the
Okay.
sprinkler valve, so the engine company goes right to the hydrant to the valve, and that's all this concrete grass that they put in 15 years ago when they built the science wing. That was just coming out on the market at that time. And walking across it, you couldn't tell the difference right now.
Got a question?
Yeah, the other thing that we talked about, in fact, for this particular project where we were, it's a very long driveway, and we were debating about the 14 feet, which we weren't comfortable with, but 12 feet we were. We talked about having pullouts every so often, and I'm wondering if that actually does help you or not. So every so often, you know, it would become, I don't know how wide, 20 feet or 16 feet.
Once that hose is in, it's almost either a squiggly or a straight line off to one side. You couldn't push it over into a turnaround. What you could think about is starting at 12 and maybe getting down towards the very high number of the driveway, widening it out a little bit to the 14. You know, start at 12 as you pull in, and then widen it out gradually. That's something else we could take into consideration.
Just make sure we have enough room to do the swing with the ladder truck. It's got no ties, and it's got basically a 10-foot hangover in the front. So with trees, it's something.
So it's really getting where you need to be and setting up, which means putting out the outriggers or whatever they're called, yeah, to stabilize as you, when you lean over.
And that's what stabilizes them in 12 feet.
So
wide.
having that wider area around, right closer to the house.
Yeah,
How
it's very
far, how
beneficial.
far away would you want to be from the house?
I mean, you're looking, the truck is 50 feet, so we want to get it,
Yeah.
okay? 30 feet.
So 30 feet from the house, because you don't want to be too close to the house.
No, no, you have to be on one side of the circle.
Well, that's what most, in the older neighborhoods, your setbacks, I believe you call it from the street, is 30. And then it jumped up to 60. So the 30 mark is probably just about what the fire department's still using.
Yeah, because we could work at 30 feet. We could strike a hand line off the truck from the street, and you could pretty much reach the roof from the street with a ladder truck. We could do all of our operation right the street. Like we said, and then a smaller road, we just block it. And then we'll bring apparatus in the other way if we can. If we can't, we adapt.
And then you can always back out afterwards.
Yeah, we'll
when you
back.
need to, so that's not an issue.
No, we're not looking for a big
Turn
turnaround.
It's
around.
going to make people that want good parking lots happier.
I'm sure there's quite a few of those.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. Some of them are parked in court, so you have to go to a little gate to get them.
No, I know. You have to get the gate keys and.
Well, listen, thank you very much. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
having you all. I appreciate you coming in to talk to us. And, you know, I expect we'll have a number of conversations as time goes on. We look forward to it.
You'll do well.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Thank you.
Good luck.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Start with 10 and then see if we had